Autoimmune rehab is for you if you think you have an autoimmune condition, know you have one and are struggling, or just want to listen and learn all you can about how to heal from autoimmune conditions. Have you ever asked yourself any of these questions? Why won't medications heal my autoimmune condition? I've already given up gluten and dairy, but I still feel sick. My doctor said my labs are normal, but I still feel sick and tired a lot. Can you really heal from an autoimmune condition? What does it take to really thrive with autoimmune conditions? What role does stress play in autoimmune conditions? What is really the best diet for autoimmune? This is Anna Laura Brown, host of Autoimmune Rehab. I started this podcast because I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's in 2018 and wanted to inspire hope and transform health for people with autoimmune challenges. So keep listening and let's get you the help and hope you really need. Today, I am happy to welcome to Autoimmune Rehab Anju Mathur. So why don't you start off, Dr. Mathur, by telling us a little bit about who are you and what brings you on to Autoimmune Rehab?
Right. Well, I'm Dr. Anju Mathur, and I'm an MD. I've done Western medicine, and I've done it all, and I realized that it wasn't really what it was supposed to be. And so I started looking for answers, and here I am. I'm doing alternative medicine, holistic medicine, and we do all sorts of things for any kind of patient of any kind, in other words. So at this point, we have figured out the exact protocols that we can use to help any autoimmune condition or any long-term chronic disease that is not being helped with the mainstream or any other treatments that people have gone through.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I mean, we've had other medical doctors come on here, and you're right. I mean, a lot of times, doctors have this awakening. They're in practice for a while and they do things the traditional way, and then they kind of wake up, so to speak, and realize, wait a minute, after all, the traditional Western medicine method isn't really serving people with autoimmune conditions and that kind of stuff. And so I know, obviously, from looking at your website, you specialize in a lot of things. I mean, you work on anything, the gamut from infrared sauna to a lot of hormones, IVs, all different kinds of things. Tell us a little bit about, what kinds of things do you find to be the most helpful, especially in the beginning when somebody's got an autoimmune condition? What would you say is, I guess, one of the first things that you would recommend that somebody does?
That's a very good question, because even though it seems very complex, because body is a multi-system, right? It's a multi-system organism. And but the basic foundation is nutrition. And when I say nutrition, I'm not talking about supplements. I'm talking about what's the right diet for you. Because if you don't know what you're supposed to eat, you will be not in the right direction. You're not going to go in the direction of healing. So what I do first thing as a first step is to find out what is the right diet for you, because every person is as unique as their fingerprints, literally. So people really need to understand that it's not one size fits all. It is something that you need to find out. So we have a system with which we find out what is your metabolic type. So we find out what exactly is happening in your body. And the other one idea that I want to give also is this. Of course, you are very unique and you have your own unique nutritional requirements. But on the other hand, you also have to know that there's no food that's bad for everyone, except unless it's processed. If it is processed, it's not good for anyone. But foods are not the problem. The problem is how your body handles that food. So if you understand how your body handles that food, then you can already, you are a step ahead in the game.
That's a good one. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That's important. So I would love to know, how do you figure that out then? Because I know there's a lot of different methods out there for figuring it out. I've been through myself with some. A lot of our guests have tried different methods, and some of them are a little bit more difficult than others. Some of them are more painful than others when it comes to trying to do different kinds of methods. But what's your method for figuring out what the best diet is for people?
This is the diet called metabolic typing that was originally was created by Dr. Donald Kelly, and that was in the 1970s. And coming forward, we have a whole system by which we find out how is your autonomic nervous system working in terms of the food. It will give you an example, like you eat sugar, for example. Your sympathetic nervous system is the one that gets upregulated. So then you get anxiety, you get sweats. You can even get sweats. Your pulse can go up, and those are the reactions of the sympathetic nervous system. So we find out what is the system that is dominant in your body, and then since Dr. Donald Kelly, he based the metabolic typing on the autonomic nervous system. And so the two systems within the autonomic nervous system is the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest, right? And recover type of thing, the parasympathetic. And the sympathetic is basically fight or flight type of reaction. So we want to know what system in your body is dominant. And based on that, we can tell you what foods are correct for you. And then one step forward from there is you want to balance your macronutrient ratios to your type, your metabolic type. You follow?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do follow you. Yeah, that's an interesting way to do things. And I think you have a really good point there too, because obviously a lot of people with autoimmune, they struggle with things like their weight and that kind of stuff. And so, by doing that metabolic typing, you're right. I mean, you can definitely help figure out a lot of things, like what's going to be best for people's weight as well as their long-term health, all that kind of stuff. So do you start with like a blood test to figure that out then, or do you have other kinds of testing that you figure out what the metabolic type is?
The testing we do is we do a hair test.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We do a hair test, and then there is a very detailed questionnaire about your exact genotype of what exactly is it. So this has been developed over periods of, decades of research has gone into it. Thousands of people have been seen and tested and whatnot. So now we have the system where you can fill out your questionnaire, and then you can find out what is your metabolic type and what is the dominant system in your body. So I always start patients from nutrition. And once the nutrition is handled and it is good, to give you an idea, people eat food because they want energy. Mm-hmm. They want to feel well. They want to feel replenished. They want to feel nourished. So if that is not happening, you eat food and you feel like you want to go to sleep or take a nap, obviously that's not the right food for you. Mm-hmm. That makes sense? So I just go down really basic. It's like, okay, when you eat food, you're eating food so you can get energy. So if you don't produce the energy, then it is either wrong type of food or the wrong combination of foods, which is the macronutrient ratios. So you want to find out how much fats, how much proteins, how much carbohydrates does this particular body require. And then you fine tune that diet so that you are doing well after each meal. And that's our goal for you.
Interesting. So do people typically start on one kind of a diet and then they maybe transition to something else over time, or how does that work?
That's a good question. Well, excellent question. So there is something called functional metabolic type, which means that this is your type right now, and this is what you need. But then down the road, we check again. We retest you. For example, 3 to 6 months from the beginning of your diet, we want to check you again to see what has shifted. Because the body is going to shift towards your genetic type. So if you were an Eskimo, you would eat particular kind of food, right? So what do Eskimos eat, right? Mainly blubber. That's what they're eating. Not much vegetables, you know.
There's a lot of fish, different things like that. Cold weather.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So they're eating high fat, high protein diet. So if they were to move down to LA, for example, if they move to LA and they're living in LA, what kind of foods do you think they're going to be eating? Right? So that eating wrong foods for your body will create something called functional type. So now you have to eat the functional type to bring it back to your genetic type. In other words, over a period of time, you will move towards your genetic type, and that's the type that you need to follow for the rest of your life.
Interesting. So you start off kind of trying to do that balance with the metabolic type, and then you move to kind of like your genetic. Interesting.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. And so we have tested and we have treated many, many thousands of patients, and I've seen that works every single time.
That's awesome. And so do you find that, a lot of people with autoimmune issues have to give up, things like gluten, dairy. There's a lot of triggers like corn, grains, things like that. Do you find that there's a lot of commonality there, or do you find that there's still, like some people can actually even eat those things, but then they have issues with other foods? What do you find there?
Oh, yes. So what I find is I also do a blood test to find out what you are allergic to.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and those allergies are different. They're delayed cellular hypersensitivities, which means that you don't break out into hives right away, but in 3 or 4 days, your body starts producing antibodies to fight those foods that you have eaten. And the type of antibody is called IgG. So we check your IgGs for 96 food panel or 200 food panel, and we want to find out what are you sensitive to, what are you allergic to. So I routinely find that people are allergic to grains, number one, gluten and gliadin, very common, dairy, very, very common, sugar, another one, very common, chocolate, oats, even oats, very common. So what I do is I just right off the bat, person says, okay, I have this autoimmune disease. So I usually take people off of gluten, dairy, sugar, and processed food.
Yep.
And then from there, we do the food allergy. So if there is anything else that shows up, for example, eggs. People have sensitive to eggs. Lots of people are sensitive to eggs. So I check that in the blood to see, okay, do you have that? And then if it shows up, it could be anything. It could be banana, pineapple, anything. So we want to find out what it is that you're sensitive to. And so we want to be precise. We want to be exact in terms of what that person needs. Could be completely different from even their family members, for example. So we are basically doing personalized medicine. So we're doing personalized to that person. So you can have 3 people with the same autoimmune disease, right? But the underlying causes could be different. It may not be the same food allergies. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I know for sure that's totally true, because just I know from my own experience and from other people that I've met, people I've interviewed, worked with, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's definitely totally, you're right. I mean, gluten, dairy, and sugar are the big triggers for pretty much everybody. In fact, I would argue that very few people should really even be eating those.
I agree.
But other than that, there's variations, because we're all created differently. We all have different genetic makeups. We all have different reasons why we developed our autoimmune condition. And the paths to healing are definitely not the same for everybody. And that's like what you said, the personalized medicine. And that's really, I want to say it's the wave of the future, but it also is the way that things should be being done now. And obviously there's doctors like yourself that are doing it, but it still hasn't become mainstream to offer that personalized medicine, which, hopefully over time it will become more and more mainstream to do it that way.
Oh yeah, I really hope that in the next couple of decades it becomes a mainstream, because I think people deserve to know the truth. They really deserve to know how the body works and what are the main things that really needs to be taken care of. And it doesn't mean that mainstream is not needed. I think it is needed for emergency situations. So if you were falling on the floor, with the stroke, you definitely need mainstream medicine to save your life. So I think the life-saving drugs are great advancement of science and the scientific procedures. I think it's all good. But for any chronic condition, you really need to find out what is causing it.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's what I always tell people, and that's what I have a lot of guests tell people too, is that too often we don't even ask why. We just kind of accept that things are the way they are, and you really have to ask why, and maybe even ask why multiple times to get to the root cause of your autoimmune issue. And this is, again, a whole other problem that some doctors have, is that they just almost don't even care about the why. They don't ask the why. They don't focus on that. And again, leads to another reason why people get frustrated. So if somebody's listening to this and they're feeling really frustrated, discouraged, maybe they know or kind of think they have autoimmune symptoms, but they haven't really even been able to get a diagnosis yet. What kinds of advice would you have for somebody like that?
Well, I think you should, there's two answers to that. One is that getting a diagnosis or label, it serves a purpose, okay? It serves a purpose. But in the end, you want to feel better. It's not that you have multiple sclerosis or you have ulcerative colitis or you have Hashimoto's disease. Mainly the person wants to feel better and not have any symptoms and feel like themselves again. So I would suggest that the person tries to find out, yeah, you can get a diagnosis, not a problem. But in the end, like we said earlier, is like you want to find out what is causing this dis-ease of the body. And you want to dig deeper, find out what it is that's causing this issue. You can get a diagnosis, but diagnosis doesn't open the door to handling. It doesn't tell you what to do if you have multiple sclerosis. But if I tell you have food allergies to banana and pineapple, and if you stop eating banana and pineapple, you're going to feel better. And so that's what I do. I'm just helping people understand their condition,
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. No, that's a good point. You have a good point. Yeah. The diagnosis is just there as a label, but that doesn't, you're right, that doesn't do anything to help people actually feel better. So once people get, this diet under control, they feel like, they're eating the way that they need to eat for their particular type, that kind of thing. What would be the next step after that you would tell people they need to do to help improve their autoimmune condition?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the next thing that is a common reason for people to get autoimmune is chronic viral infections. So you want to go get tested for it, and you want to find out, do you have Epstein-Barr virus? Do you have mycoplasma? What do you have? Because most commonly what I see in my practice for the autoimmune patients, they one for one have, I think, multiple viruses. So it's not just one, they have multiple viruses. And what happens is that if you have an Epstein-Barr virus in your body, it is going to infect the immune cells. So not only your throat or your liver or your spleen, but it actually is going to infect the immune cells. So the immune cells are infected, they cannot defend the body. And when they cannot defend the body, their reaction to any kind of stress or any kind of challenge to the body is to attack the body itself. And this is why we get into trouble. We get into autoimmunity because of that infected cells of the immune system. So you would have to find out, okay, what do I have? So you would have to go get tested for that.
Yep, that's a good point, because I know Lyme disease is another common one too, that I've talked to several people that got autoimmune triggered after Lyme. And then of course, with COVID too, I'm starting to find, that people are getting autoimmune triggered by COVID infection that never went away either.
Oh, for sure. I have a lot of patients like that. They have long COVID, long haul COVID, whatever you want to call it, but they have high levels of spike protein antibodies. So then we have to treat that. But this is, like I said, everybody's different, but you need to find out what is causing, triggering your problems. And it's not like a single instant of something. It's a chronic disease. So it's happening for a while. So to unravel that, you have to do one step at a time and go back and fix all these little things that are problem in the body. So then you can overall feel well and feel like yourself again. If you do only one thing, it makes you feel better. For example, just fixing a diet, you are going to feel better, but it's only like to a certain degree. Mm-hmm. It doesn't remove the entirety of the cause of your autoimmunity. So this is what I've seen, and I've tried it many different ways. Since I'm an MD, I'm pretty familiar with the mainstream. And so I wanted to just find out, like, how do you really get to the bottom of this thing? So I kind of figured out my protocols, and by seeing so many patients, so I just follow the protocol and I treat patients based on that. And the chances for you to get better is over 80 to 90%.
Wow. Yeah. It's a pretty high percentage, and I think that's the news that a lot of people need to hear too, because I think a lot of people just get frustrated, discouraged. They just have a tendency to want to give up, think they can't get better. But yeah, that's really good to hear, 80 to 90%. So, if you're listening to this and you are feeling a little discouraged and frustrated, know that that's a temporary thing and you really can get better.
100%. I always have this other stable datum, which is something can be done about anything. So no matter what your condition is, you can absolutely do something about it. So don't ever think that nothing can be done, because the reason I'm saying this is because I get patients who have seen other doctors or mentioned doctors, and they have told the patient to just suck it up. I mean, literally.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? So they are being, like you said, the patients or people are being told that there is nothing that can be done, and they have to learn to live with it. And that's not what my message is. The message is you can do something about it anytime. And I have treated patients at age 81.
Wow.
Yes, and I'm treating them still, and they're doing awesome. They are able to live their lives, do what they want to do, and they're very happy to be able to live their lives.
For sure, absolutely, yeah. And I do feel like too often doctors do just tell patients that it's in their head or to suck it up, or there's nothing wrong. They can't figure out what the problem is, so they just assume that it's not solvable. And I know the average person with autoimmune goes to at least 3 or 4 different doctors. I know for me, I went through, it was 3 doctors in at least 5 years to finally figure out what was even going on. So, this definitely creates a lot of frustration for a lot of people. And so, what you're doing is really amazing, and I'm sure you probably are out there trying to advocate, trying to get more doctors to wake up and realize that your methods and the way that you're doing things really work for people and that kind of stuff.
I mean, it's kind of a bit sad because I remember one time I like patients who have had, let's say, stent placement, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is just a chronic disease. They have had a heart attack or whatever, and they get the stents or whatever. Or even they go into heart failure. And I remember talking to cardiologists and telling them, okay, send me your worst patient. Somebody that you cannot do anything about. Just send them to me.
Mm-hmm.
But even that, they don't want to do. Which is interesting to me. I'm like, okay, so you're not helping the person, but you're not giving them any other direction. So it's kind of interesting. There's obviously all kinds of people. They're not all the same. There is doctors that really care about the patients, and they're trying to figure out a solution for them, I'm sure. I mean, that's why we get into medicine, because we want to help people.
You would hope so. I mean, I'm sure that's why you did it, but sometimes, some of the stories I hear, I kind of wonder, about some doctors out there, but
Yeah, I mean, you would imagine, and that's why they got attracted to the field of medicine. But unfortunately, not everybody. I mean, that just surprises me every time I have a patient that comes from, major institution like well-known UCLA, USC, or Cedars-Sinai. All these hospitals are very well known, and the doctors just tell them there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to learn to live with it. And that shocks me. I'm like, how do you tell someone that? It doesn't even make sense to me to even tell someone, even if there was nothing that they could do. I mean, telling someone is like giving them the last kind of a warning or something, it just doesn't make sense. So I always say, look, something can be done about it.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That's great. And so how do you work primarily with people in person, or you do telehealth as well too?
I do like to see people in person,
Mm-hmm.
in spite of the pandemic and everything. And I do also do virtual.
Mm-hmm.
But it's better if they are very sick. It's better if they come in person and get the treatments here at our practice.
Mm-hmm.
But I do virtual. Yeah.
I just bring that up because, we'll link your contact information below so people can reach out to you.
Yes.
I'm sure a lot of people are probably not going to be in your area. You're in California, right?
I'm in California, Southern California, in Studio City. But I'll give you an example of a patient that came from Louisiana.
Wow.
And she was sick for 25 years. Very, very nice family.
Mm-hmm.
And the husband and wife both came, but the wife was very sick. And so I told her, okay, I'll take you on and we're going to work together to help improve your condition. And she had seen multiple doctors, multiple drugs, multiple medications she was on. And still she wasn't feeling well. She wasn't able to do her thing. She was a mother. She's a mother with, I think 3 sons and a lot of work, but not able to get out of bed and do anything. And so I said, okay, just stay here. I'll help you. And then 2 months later, she goes back home completely fine. And she's living her life now. She's like, and I obviously she's off the drugs. I don't like the drugs that are not really needed for that person. And she's got off all the drugs and she's completely living a natural life and she's very, very happy. So, I mean, how important is it? Like 2 months of your life to get well so you can live your life normally. You know what I mean?
For sure, absolutely, yeah. For some people, it's definitely worth traveling. I mean, you think about it, there's a lot of people that travel even to places like the Mayo Clinic and stuff like that for different kinds of treatments. So, yeah, I mean, if you definitely are in a big enough need, then, yeah, traveling would definitely be worth it. I can definitely see that.
Yeah, I recommend that you get out of the environment that you're in and come into a different environment and then do something different than what you have been doing. Try it out, see if it works, and it shouldn't take very long. I'm saying to see the difference, it doesn't take very long. It's pretty fast. It's like a few days, couple of weeks, you should start seeing the difference. But to take it all the way where you're feeling perfect takes a few weeks. So I recommend that you put your attention on it and get yourself treated because you deserve it.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. Well, and the thing is, you think about it, it definitely helps increase your quality of life, and if you're just not finding somebody in your local area that's able to help you, then, I mean, it depends on where people live. I mean, there are obviously some places that have more, the functional medicine available to them. And other places where maybe they don't have it as much. But you're right. I mean, it's all about your quality of life. And if you're not getting the answers you need, then yeah, you may have to travel and go somewhere, see either somebody like yourself or whatever.
For sure. I mean, if you find somebody local, that's fantastic. Do that. But don't just sit on it and not do something about it because you can do something about it. That's really just my message. The idea is to decide that you can do something about it and do it.
For sure, absolutely. So I noticed I was looking here on your website, so you do, it looks like some other things like IV therapy, regenerative medicine, some of that kinds of stuff. Tell us a little bit about how does that kind of stuff work and what kind of role does that play in your practice?
Right. So we do a lot of what are they called oxidative IV therapies, which basically means that it reduces the inflammation and it changes the internal environment of the body. So when you are kind of stuck with a long-term chronic disease, the internal system or internal environment is such that the body cannot heal. Mm-hmm. So you have to clean it up. And that's what we do with the IV treatments. It's the oxidative treatments. We do multiple different types of IV treatments. But the concept is to boost the immune system and detox the body and clean it up. So then now it can function better. And that's really what the basics of the IV is. And the other thing is that obviously you cannot, if you're doing nutrients, you cannot absorb it from your gut, the nutrients, because you've been sick for that long. Your gut is probably not working correctly. So then taking more supplements doesn't help.
Yeah.
It's not going to be absorbed. It's not going to be, and you kind of get, you kind of get frustrated and you're not getting better. So people kind of give up. So this is why I don't go there to start. I start with the IV. So then you can see the difference and then you kind of slowly graduate back into the supplements.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think too often too many doctors treat the supplements like a drug, basically a pill for an ill, but instead they try to replace natural, but yet they don't actually, help you clean up your environment, your digestion, make sure that you're actually going to absorb the things that they're giving you.
Exactly. So that's why the frustration comes from supplements, because they are not really getting absorbed. So what's the point, right? So I suggest that people really decide that they are going to get better, and then they do. They find some doctor that they can get along with. That's another very important point. I suggest that you find a practitioner, a physician that you can get along with, and then you start the treatments, and then you get better.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. And that's the other thing I always tell people is don't be afraid to fire your current doctor if they're just not serving you. If they're not helping you, and if they're not partnering with you to help improve your health and giving you hope that you can actually get better, then why are you going to them? I mean, that's kind of pointless.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that surprises me. Sometimes the patients come in and they tell me that they have been seeing this chiropractor or the nutritionist or acupuncturist for like years. And I'm like, you're seeing the person every years. And how do you, so that's why I say that, yeah, you're right. As soon as you are starting the treatment, you should see the change. You should see the change, and you should see the change, and you should continue to change until you get to where your goals are.
Yep, absolutely. Good point. So anything else you'd like to share with people before we end? And like I said, we'll include your link to your website, your information, anything other kind of information that you want to give us. We'll link to that so that people will have it, so they can reach out and contact you.
Oh, I think it's a website. The website is angellongevity.com.
Yep.
And that's the website. It has a lot of information. There's a contact form there. You can fill that out. Tell us about yourself, what's happening with you, and then we give you a call back, finding out, okay, how can we move forward to help you resolve your difficulties. Awesome.
Great. So anything else you want to share that I didn't ask you about?
No, you did great.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think the main thing that you wanted to bring to the forefront is that I wanted to bring to the forefront is something you can do about it. Don't give up, and just keep looking for the doctor that you can get along with and that makes sense to you. If it doesn't make sense to you, don't bother. Don't bother.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. Great. Well, thanks so much for coming on. And like I said, we'll have your information linked below. So if this has resonated with you, feel free to reach out and get in touch with her.
Right. Thank you, Anna.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Autoimmune Rehab. If you found it helpful, I'd like to encourage you to please reach out to at least one person in your life that you know could benefit and share this episode with them and invite them to subscribe and continue learning all about how they too can benefit from the words of wisdom and the different stories and things to help people improve their lives with autoimmune conditions and help you achieve true healing. I'd also appreciate any feedback you have, as well as if you leave me a review or rating on either Apple Podcasts or in the Spotify app. And want to take things to the next level? My podcast is sponsored by my brand new online community and training where we get together for weekly office hours, monthly trainings and support, as well as worksheets, different things like that to help you improve even more on your journey to autoimmune healing. It's called the Essential Wellness Circle, and I'd love to have you join me inside the circle. You'll find the link in the show notes this podcast, but it's at essentialwellnesscircle.com. I do hope you'll check out this community and the details about what it takes to join. It's a little bit of a different kind of a community, but I'd really love to have you join. And again, thanks for listening to Autoimmune Rehab.